last month's general elections, Malaysia's main opposition parties have moved quickly to cement their footing. One of their first decisions has been to dismantle the affirmative action policy in 2 states, a policy which has given preference to ethnic Malays for more than 3 decades. But the opposition's ambitions are much higher, especially for one man, former Deputy Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim. Dr Anwar has been working behind the scenes to persuade members of the government to swap sides. His senior aide claims they have the numbers. And, as Wei Fern Tay reports, Dr Anwar's ban on political office expires today, paving the way for him to become Prime Minister.
Malaysian opposition parties have never held much sway in the country until today.
When we woke up on March the 9th, I think we were very, very shocked and surprised. I think this was a sentiment that was replicated all across, whether it's within government or within opposition.
The ruling coalition Barisan Nasional had scored its worst ever election result. For the first time in history, it no longer had absolute control of parliament.
Surprisingly, the surge was so great that besides besides denying the ruling government the 2/3 majority, we also managed to capture 5 states, which to us is quite a big achievement.
Roslan Shahir is the media advisor to the Islamic Party PAS, one of the 3 main opposition parties that scored big. His 2 other political partners have wasted no time in erasing some of the government's contentious legacies in 2 states. The first to go was the affirmative action policy, which gives preference to ethnic Malays. The decision did not go down well among certain quarters.
For the incident in Penang, it was not created by the people, not by the voters. It wasn't led by the voters. Participants in that demonstration mainly consist of UMNO members in Penang.
This is probably an indication that many Malaysians, although they voted for the opposition parties which advocated a non-racially lined economic policy, it does show that we're still a little bit sensitive when it comes to race and ethnic relations. I think although the intentions are pure, I think although we know the objectives at the end of the day, the process of getting there is not so simple.
The government's public humiliation appears to have turned from embarrassment to retribution. Its tourism minister recently cancelled funding for the newly held opposition states.
We faced the same thing in 1999 when we managed to capture Terengganu, whereby oil royalty, because Terengganu is a petroleum producing state, all royalty supposed to be paid to the state suddenly discontinued by the federal government simply because the Terengganu people voted for the opposition.
But this is an unprecedented opportunity for the opposition, and they are moving fast to secure their power base. Their leader is former Deputy Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim, and he claims to have convinced nearly 30 members from Barisan Nasional to swap sides, a number just short of forming government themselves.
In fact, we are offering, especially to UMNO Member of Parliament, to reconsider and perhaps join us in PAS to strengthen the new coalition, and hopefully we could form a new federal government.
Malaysians have, like I said, for so long lived under the impression that nothing could change. We lived under the impression that Barisan Nasional was going to be the be-all and end-all government for the rest of our lives. I mean, that's what most of us grew up with. But I think Anwar is being a games master in trying to inject that possibility that he can be the next leader. And in order to do that, he needs to start early.
After initially refusing to resign, Prime Minister Abdullah Badawi has softened his stance by saying he will go when the time is right. He's even announced a successor as well. Political analysts like Khoo Kay Peng believe the embattled leader can notch out some much-needed goodwill in the meantime by releasing the 5 Indian activists currently held under the Internal Security Act, a law that allows indefinite detention without trial.
Considering that he wants to be remembered as a Prime Minister who has contributed greatly to the reform of this country, is to look at ways to abolish the ISA altogether. And I think By doing that, he will be able to create a uniting force, to collaborate with the opposition MPs as well, to ensure that this draconian act is taken away, is abolished for good. And I think he will be remembered for that.
Wei Fern Tay reporting. Michael Lee is Professor of Contemporary Asian Studies at the University of Melbourne and a former President of the Asian Studies Association of Australia, focusing on future directions in Malaysia. He joined me in the studio a short while ago. Michael Lee, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Why is the government appearing to be under so much pressure when Barisan Nasional won fairly convincingly?
I think there's two aspects. The first is that the leader of the opposition, Anwar Ibrahim, is playing a great game of political brinkmanship. He's contesting against people who have been in power without a break for the last 50 years, and they no longer have the level of political skills to handle him. They're used to having the support of government and being the government and relying on the power of government, and he's got them frightened.
So they simply weren't prepared for this?
They had no inkling that the election would go as badly as it has. Of course, in international terms, gaining nearly 2/3 of the seats in the federal parliament is not a defeat at all, but it has been taken that way.
What do you think is the likelihood of Anwar Ibrahim persuading Barisan Nasional members to defect to the opposition?
In the past, at the state level, the Barisan Nasional has managed to persuade opposition members, even when they were a majority in at least two of the state parliaments, to defect, allegedly through the payment of very substantial inducements up to 1 million ringgit per member. Were